Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we're back in War Thunder looking at a new vehicle which was given to us in up-to-date 1.69. This is the Italian bomber series Z1007 BIS Serie 3 and Serie 5. So the reason why I'm doing them together is because, well, there really isn't that much difference between them. If you look at the bomb loads, if you look at the defensive armaments, if you look at the engine power, they are exactly the same. If you look at their model, they are pretty much the same. The only real difference I can see between the Serie 5 and the Serie 3 is that the Serie 5 has the dual rudder on the tail, where you have two rudders on the edges of the tail, whereas the Serie 3 has the central rudder, which is very similar to a lot of fighters that you'll find in the Italian tree. When it comes to anything else which is actually useful, though, it seems exactly the same. So when I'm talking about one of these vehicles, then just think about it as I'm talking about the other one. Very similar to when I had a look at the P108s. So at 2.7 and at 3.0, the Z1007s are okay. I would say. When we look at the defensive armaments, they have a 12.7mm Breda Safat, one 12.7mm Scotty machine gun, and two 7.7 Breda Safats in the waist gunner position. So the top machine gun is the Scotty machine gun that you will see in a top turret, which is just behind the pilots, where there is two of them in the cockpit. And even though this turret will give you some false hope, I mean, it kind of seems like it can turn all the way around. Generally, because of where it's situated and the way that its angle works for its machine gun, it doesn't actually cover as much as you'd like. It does cover a decent amount behind the vehicle and above it, which is great, but when it comes to, being able to cover in front of the vehicle, well, it just doesn't want to. It doesn't feel like it, unfortunately. When we look at the other 12.7mm, the Breda Safat on the bottom, it seems to have the same issue that a lot of these Italian bombers have, where the bottom gunner really doesn't have a great arc of fire unless somebody is really below you, which generally, if they're attacking you, then they're not going to be. They're going to be either directly behind you or coming from above you, just because that is the general attack pattern of most fighters in this game. The waist gunners themselves have a very small window to fire out of, but they have a decent wide, shooting arc that they can use. Most of the time you will have to manually control them, though, because generally they won't actually shoot by themselves, or at least the arc is kind of odd when it comes to the AI pathing, so you actually have to control them by yourself. So, compared to other machines, like other bombers that we have in the Italian line, these are obviously worse than the P108s, which have a pretty decent amount of defensive armaments behind them, and also they're slightly better than the SM79s, but not by much. I mean, the only real difference between the SM79s and the Z1007s is that the top turret, which I talked about before, the Scotty machine gun, is that it has more coverage than the 12.7mm Breda Safat that you'll see on them. One of the things that it also loses compared to the SM79s, or at least the majority of them, it doesn't have that forward-firing 12.7mm, which is kind of annoying. Not a massive loss, but definitely something that is just... It's nice to have that extra option, and unfortunately you don't have that with the Z1007s. Something to note, which I don't think I've talked about before in any of the other reviews, which maybe I should. The Kant Z1007 actually has its name as a little decal on near where the cockpit is. Now this is actually also on some other vehicles such as the Breda 88 and the BA65. I just thought it was a nice little thing. It kind of shows what vehicle it is. I don't know if it's historically accurate, I'm guessing it is, but it's just something nice to point out when we have a look at these machines. So let's get to the nitty-gritty. We've already talked about how it's not great at defending itself, so how good is its bomb loads? Well, its bomb loads are okay. One of the really nice things about it is you get a huge variety of them, even though a lot of them may seem very similar to you. The major difference between them is the 100 kilograms. So if you see a bomb load of 4 250s and 3 100s, and then another one of 3 100s and 4 250s, check the 100 kilogram bombs. They seem to be the ones which change. Same with all of the other bomb loads, so even though maybe it seems like there's a lot of bomb loads, a lot of these are very similar, and some are just straight inferior than other ones if we look at stuff that actually matters. So you start off with 12 50 kilogram bombs and 12 100 kilogram bombs. Well, the thing to go for is the 12 100s. 1200 kilos is pretty good. Generally, if you get down tiered or maybe at your own tier, you might be able to take out a base. You could carpet bomb a line of tanks and maybe get a lucky few hits, but at least you don't have to wait too long until you get the 250s. Then you graduate onto the 4 250s and then the 3 100s, so you're looking at a collective 1300 kilos, so you're getting slightly more, and then the 6 250s as well. So the 6 250s are obviously 1500 kilograms. You're at a point now where you can not worry about having to take out a base, and you can basically just drop all your bombs and take out a base, which is good. And then you move on to the bomb load, which I think is probably the best, the 2 500s and the 6 100s. And then if you want to get the last upgrade for the bomb loads, you also get the 3 100s and the 800. So if we're talking about just max bomb power here, or max amount of damage that you can do, the 2 500s and the 6 100s is the way to go. Now there are two of these, so what you have to do is you have to check the differences between them. The main differences between them is, as I've said before, the 100 kilogram bombs. On the first iteration of the 600s and 2 500s, you have the SAP 100 bomb, which has an explosive mass of 27.3 kilos, which isn't really a lot. And then you look at the second one, which is the GP 100. It has an explosive mass of 50.6 kilograms. So if you don't take the right 100 kilogram bombs, you're basically halving how good those 100 kilogram bombs are. So it's quite a big difference if you take the right ones. So just make sure that you check that, whether you're taking the 250 100 bomb load, or the 500 100, or the 800 100. Now what's nice about having a lot of these different bomb loads is that when ground forces come around, it means that you are able, or will be able, to kind of pick what variation you want, which suits the situation better. Right now, unfortunately, because there isn't a ton of different targets in Air Realistic, at least that's the game mode I mainly play, you're not really going to make a massive push to use certain bomb loads. I mean, you're just going to use the best one, and then try and do what you can with it. I mean, for me personally, the 2 500s and the 6 100s mean that you can take out a base in its entirety and not really worry about it too much, and then get back to base if you haven't been jumped by about 50 fighters who will easily take you out because you have no armor and very limited defensive armaments. But, at least you've got that base. It's as simple as that. But maybe when ground forces come around, it's actually better to take the 6 250s. Or maybe it's better to take that massive 800 kilogram bomb. Now, something to note, which is probably a lot different to a lot of other aircraft you've flown. The Z1007 series of bombers actually drops their bomber load first from the center of the fuselage, so where the bomb bay doors are. So just make sure that you don't get caught out by that. So there's a lot of bombers out there which actually drop their wing-mounted bombs first, but in this aircraft, for some reason, the center bombs get dropped first. So if you're over a target, make sure that you have those bomb bay doors open. That means if you're carrying the 500s and the 100s, or the 800s and the 100s, the 500s will drop first compared to the 100s mounted on the wings. So that's just something to take into account. But overall, is it fun to fly? When we look at all of these new bombers, this is probably the least fun I've had with an Italian bomber. The P108s I've had actually pretty decent fun in. They are quite large, they have a really good bomb load, and because of where their BR is, it's actually quite competitive against a lot of fighters out there. And as I've said before, you have more mechanics which make it interesting to fight with, such as worrying about convergence, you know, maybe turning off certain engines to get a nice coverall. You've got the nice little tail, or the dorsal turret at the bottom which pops out. It's nice to see. And when we look at the BR-20, it's also quite fun to fly. You know, even though it's basically a big metal box at the end of the day. It's still fun to fly just because it's quite quick at 1.7. The Z1007 doesn't have that much of an impressive bomb load and doesn't really have that much of defensive armament, and it's definitely not that fast for around 3.0. You're looking at around 450, 440, fully upgraded for both of these machines, and generally that's not too quick. And because of the defensive armaments, you're generally not going to be able to cover yourself either. So, and it's also a example of an Italian aircraft where if one of its engines gets taken out, then it struggles really hard to stay in the air. Think about how the Sparviero is. Well, the Z1007 is basically exactly the same. And because there's no armor on the vehicle, it's very hard for it to actually stay in the air. So just take that into account as well. But overall, it is the least fun I've had with any of these Italian bombers. It was still okay to fly and good for grinding out the fighters in the area, but overall I would probably give it a miss and just go and fly the P108s. They're basically the same BR and you're going to face the same stuff in them, and you get a better bomb load, better defensive armaments, and they're just funner to fly. I don't know what else to say, so I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.